Alright, so I bet you guys probably thought that was super awesome, looking at some of those old school games in their native resolution compared to when you upscale it into 4K. So let's dive right into this. If you guys are interested in how I did this, I'm going to show you what you're going to need. So the two things we're going to focus on is the actual emulator and then the app that you're going to need to connect your DualShock 4 to use that when playing. So I've got links in the description for these two websites opened up here. We'll go through real quick. The first one is pcsx2.net. That is the actual emulator. You're going to click onto the download page. You're going to go there and you're going to download the Windows edition if you have Windows. Again, this tutorial is designed specifically for Windows, so if you guys are using Mac, try and follow along if you can, and use Mac keys wherever possible, but it's not really intended for that. Anyways, back to the tutorial. So here is the latest version that they have. It's the 1.40, and all you need is the standalone installer. So we're going to go ahead and download that. Once it finishes, you're going to go through the setup and make sure you follow everything. Now, I already have this installed, so I'm not going to go through, but it's just a basic quick install of everything, and you move forward from there. Next, what we're going to need is to configure the DualShock 4 controller to work with Windows and with this app. So what we're going to do is go over to this website. It's called ds4windows.com, and very simply you're going to click on the green download now button. Once you do that, you'll be taken over to a GitHub page, which is where the file is actually located, and from there you're going to download the zip file that you see up front. The latest version was released 3 years ago, guys. They're not making a new one because they don't need to. Works flawlessly. So you go ahead and download that, unzip it, just like I have here, and you're going to run the Windows exe. Now, this isn't an installation, it's actually just an app that runs local. So what you're going to want to do is extract this onto your desktop or some place where you want to access it, because this is what you're going to need to run every single time you connect your DualShock 4. So once you have that up and running, this is what it should look like. So I'll open up DualShock 4, and see, I've created a shortcut for it, but if you go ahead and click it, you're going to get this screen here. Now you can see I have one plugged in via USB. If I hit stop, it's going to disconnect my DualShock 4 controller. So at this point, we're just going to assume that you and I both don't have a DualShock 4 connected. Of course, you're going to need a micro USB cable to connect this. Now you can also do this over Bluetooth, but I wouldn't recommend that because I had some issues with that. It would disconnect on its own, and there were some latency issues. So the best way to do this is just plug it in. Once you plug your controller in, just like I'm about to do now, I've plugged in, you're going to hit start, and it should detect your controller and then give it a blue color on the light bar. You can change the color to be whatever you want, use a custom color or any other color that you want basically. Anyways, now that we have DualShock 4 activated, we can leave that aside. If you have any issues where it's not responding, just leave it on the default setting, hit stop and hit start again. You don't have to edit any profiles in here at all. I haven't touched any settings whatsoever. Make sure you leave this window open, do not close it, just minimize it at most. Now let's go over to the PCSX2. So I'm going to type in PCSX2, open it up here. This is what it will look like. So at first you're probably thinking, okay, how do I boot games into this? And it's actually really simple. So the very first thing that you're going to want to do is locate your actual game files, and those come in the format of ISOs. So if you can see here, I have a bunch of different ISOs of different games that I have backups of, and this is what I'm going to use, or what I've showed you guys in my testing. Now, getting an ISO is your business, guys. I'm not going to tell you where you can go and get them. That is openly available on the internet, so just a quick search of Google and you guys should be good there. So I'm going to select a game here. I'm going to pick God of War 2. And if I want to boot into it, all I have to do is click boot CD DVD full, and then you're going to be presented with this screen here. So this is a full boot, which means it's going to take you through the BIOS and everything is that. Now again, don't worry about my resolution here. This resolution is actually running in 4K, so it looks super crisp. And even though up here it says 640 by 512 or 448, that is always going to display that. That's the native resolution of the game being used. Now, regardless of what you change your settings into, this will always say that. So you can probably already see here that this is really crisp. Now I'm going to go into the settings and show you real quick. If I go in config, I go into video, go into plugin settings, I'm going to change this quickly down to native and hit OK, and look at the difference there. This is the native PS2 resolution. This is what you're going to see when you're booting up for the first time. You don't have any of these settings adjusted up on the top, as you can see up here. And as you can also see, it still says 512 by 448. Now let's doing a quick switch back. We'll go back to change this to custom, and in my custom I have 3840 by 2160, which is 4K. I'm gonna hit OK. Boom, it changes to a crisp resolution right there, you can see. And it still says that, so don't go off of the resolution that's up there. That can throw a lot of people off. The main thing you want to worry about up here is the speed. It should be running at 100% or 60 FPS. That's when you know that your system can handle it in this resolution. So now that I've shown you guys how I have this here, what I'm going to show you guys is my actual settings. That's the main reason you guys are here. So I don't touch anything in emulation, memory cards, plugin. That stuff is all general. The main thing you're going to be editing inside here is the video settings, and that too you're going to go straight into plugin. So take a good look at what I have opened up here, because this is the settings that work best for me. You can always go and play around with them, but I found that these tend to give me the most stable resolution without a lot of artifacting and glitches. So the first thing I've done here is I've selected my default hardware device. Now you can see I have a GTX 1080 Ti. I can go ahead and click that as well, but for the purpose of this video, you want to leave this to your default hardware device. And you can change that later on if you have issues, but we'll stick with default for the start. Second, what you're going to use for rendering is OpenGL, which is basically if you're using an NVIDIA card. You can use hardware emulation through that, or you can pick a different DirectX 3D version that might work. Now again, these are my settings. This is what works for me. It may not 100% work for you based on your CPU and your specs. So keep that in mind when you go ahead and adjust all these settings. Now, interlacing, this one is important. You want to make sure you pay attention to this one, because what I noticed a lot is that I got shaking. So it says use blend if shaking. Shaking is the screen kind of seemed like it was vibrating, and that's because the original resolution of PS2 is so low, it's not interlaced, meaning that there isn't anything to stop anti-aliasing or jagged edges from showing. So it basically fills that gap in, and these are the different ways that it does that. And it's the same thing as doing anisotropic filtering, or I don't know if I butchered that, but anisotropic, whatever. But what you want to set this is to blend, and that is triple filtering. So TFF is for triple, blending is for double with the BFF. So we'll stay on TFF. And in here, what we're going to do is adjust our resolution. You want to click this to custom and then set it to 3840 by 2160, as that's 4K resolution. Now, word of caution, if your display itself is not a 4K display, there is absolutely no point in doing this. The max that you should do it to is what your display is actually at. So if you only have a full HD monitor or a quad HD monitor, or QHD, basically 2K resolution, adjust it to that setting. In texture filtering, we're going to leave this to bilinear forced, and the bottom for the anisotropic filtering, we're going to turn this up all the way to the max at 16x. We're going to change our CRC hack level to aggressive. We will leave the enable hardware hacks checked, and if you click on that, I have set MSAA down to 16 as well. Everything else is off, and I've also clicked on the icon for align sprite. Make sure you guys do this as well. Hardware depth, leave that checked as well. If it's not checked in your stock settings, make sure you do that. And in the blending unit accuracy, the one I kept here is high, recommended for a high-end PC. Now again, I wouldn't recommend you go any further than that. There's really no need. It's overkill. It's like taking a bazooka for a fly, like I said before. So it's just fine to keep this on high. If you have a really crappy PC or a crappy laptop, then change this to low for the basic setting. But in this example, we're running this on high because we want everything to be maxed out here. Now the shader configuration, I haven't touched anything on this. If this isn't already enabled for you guys, I can't remember if it is, just make sure that your settings match mine. So tick the enable shade boost and tick the enable FXAA as well. And that's pretty much it for the settings of video. This is what you need to have enabled, and this is how you're gonna get 4K to work. Now, if you notice that on your system, for whatever reason, you don't get this to work, there's other settings you can go in and tweak. So for example, what we're gonna do is I'm gonna hop back to native here, leave everything else as it is, and you can see how it's looking pretty crap there. Now, what this emulator is pretty cool for and has like automatic settings in there is you can take this default resolution that's here, which was what, 644 by 512 or whatever it was, and you can change the native just to get multiplied. So if you ever use an emulator on Android like PPSSPP, for example, you know how you can upscale it directly just by clicking 2 or 3 times the native. Now 6 times the native is pretty much 4K. It's close to 4K. And you can see it's coming up pretty crisp there. Now based on your computer, you may be able to get away with just changing this native setting. Of course, leaving everything else the same. Now you'll have to play around with this and find the sweet spot. These are the settings that I'm using that gets me 4K. So I leave it on custom so I get that custom resolution, because multiplying it by 8 times is actually more than 4K, and it's pointless on my display. Now these, again, like I said, these are my settings. Make sure you copy them, and that's pretty much how you guys get this done. So we'll go ahead and show you how it runs. So I will actually go ahead and do a load state, so you can save those in the emulator as well. And I have one saved up here, and let's show you guys some gameplay in 4K of God of War in a little bit more detail. So, and now here, this is using the DualShock 4, guys. And that's the best way to play this. You don't want to be playing an emulator with keyboard or anything like that. But look how crisp that looks. That is what you want to go for, right? This makes PS2 games actually playable in 2019. I mean, looking at these games in their original resolution, so I'll switch it back here just so you can see, and it's definitely no fun when you're playing in native resolution. I mean, it's so outdated. Look at that. It's like an eyesore. You can barely see the pixels. It's not horrible, but it's not the ideal way to play today, right? Like, this isn't going to get someone interested in playing a game, especially when it's an older classic like this. You want to enjoy it in today's resolution. And the best part is, you don't have to wait for upscaled HD versions or remastered versions of PS2 games. You're basically scaling it all and remastering it yourself by doing this. Look at that. Look at that. That's pretty much remastered right there, guys. There's absolutely no need to go and pay extra money for a PS2 game that's been remastered in 4K or whatever, or HD on other consoles. So good games like God of War 2 or Gran Turismo 3, Resident Evil 4, as you guys saw in the video as well. Like, I know Resident Evil 4 has been remade in HD and you can play that way as well on PC, but hey, I mean, if you've got PS2 games lying around, some like Silent Hill 2, for example, that hasn't been remastered, or the Crash Bandicoot series, I know the recent one's been remastered and whatnot, but you get my point. Here's the way that you play your PS2 games in 4K, guys. That was it. Pretty straightforward, pretty easy tutorial. If you have any questions, just don't forget to ask me below, because like I said, my settings might vary from what your settings are going to be like, but that's pretty much how